a lot of the stuff I used to do wasn't really for me. I felt like I was doing it for others and almost bending myself into a pretzel, trying to make it okay for everyone else and not really following my own kind of higher guidance. So when I had that realization years ago, like, am I really, is this what I want to be doing, or is this what somebody else wants me to be doing? And it's not even their fault. It's just something that you buy into.
Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems, and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Uncovered. I am super excited. I've got this amazing woman that I've actually known about for a very, very long time. And she's in Canberra. She is, I'm not sure whether you're Canberra born and bred, we'll find that out. And has been in the helping industry for a long time and in the psychic industry, which is a really interesting part of personal development. People who can read other people, understand where they're at, and give them guidance in a way that a lot of people can't do. So Suzy is a very unique individual. She had a chat with Anya recently and completely nailed every single thing that was going on for her and where she was going and what she was doing. And I actually had a reading from you, Suzy, last week. You got to see me being vulnerable, Jason, having a little bit of a meltdown, being very emotional and real. And we're going to talk today, guys, about how to lead a conscious life. So Suzy, welcome to Uncovered. Thanks for jumping on with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm such a fangirl. I love your podcasts. I listen to your impromptu lives, and I absolutely love everything you and Anya do. It's so, high vibrational and real. And I'm thrilled to be here.
That's fantastic. So I'd love a little bit of backstory around you, Suzy. A lot of people I've been sort of that sort of gifted one all my life, known stuff about people and, messages and all that sort of stuff. I'd love to know, let's go back a little bit. Who was Suzy and when did she realize she had a piece of magic to share with the world? Let's go back.
Yeah, for me, it was all the way back to childhood. And I am a Canberra girl, born and bred, so I love living on Ngunnawal country. And I've also witnessed your journey as well, Jason. And, as I said, love what you do. For me, from a very early age, I realised, and my family realised, that I had this inborn gift to communicate with spirit, and from a psychic and mediumship perspective. But over the years I've grown and realized that although I love doing that predictive work and it's an honor to be that messenger for spirit, I don't want to just be that fortune teller, So but from a very early age, communicated with Granddad after he passed, and freaked my family out basically with all sorts of detailed information at the age of 4 that was very helpful to them at the time to find missing papers, or I'd ask them to get out of Granddad's chair. I'd communicate with him, and that's where it started. So for me, it's been a lifelong journey. I am a reluctant psychic medium. For years, I was in the corporate world. Although I've always been spiritual, it took me a long time to realize that I really need to fully embrace my calling and step into that arena and not be half-assed about it.
Yeah, so tell me about what was it like being in the corporate world and being very, very different? How did you handle being in that space and knowing you'd walk in a room and you'd sense a lot more than what was going on? You know, everyone's talking about we need to get this job done, and you'd be like sitting there just going, oh, that person's had their parents, they're having a fight right now with their partner, and all of this sort of stuff's going on in your mind. How would you handle that in that sort of corporate environment?
Really interesting. I kept a lot of that to myself, and I was very discerning, although it was very helpful, especially when I was in that high sales industry. And I was often in a management role as well. So, it was interesting. I guess I realized early on too that, it wasn't always appropriate to be tuned in all of the time because, too much information, as you said, I know what you two are up to. I know where this is leading. I know how this is going to unfold. Your grandmother wants to get a message through to you. It's not always appropriate, right? But I guess I used it for my own personal use. And if I felt the environment was safe to share, I'd ask if they were, open to the idea. But yeah, interesting to navigate that corporate world when you have that kind of insight and that inbuilt kind of gift. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd know all about that.
100%. And the thing that's really challenging, listeners, is that both Suzy and I have worked with many, many people who are in corporate with gifts, right? In corporate with gifts, they have that sensitivity, they have that insight, they have that ability to read, and they're in a corporate environment, and we're not allowed to share this sort of stuff, right? But so many have come to us, haven't they? And they've said, hey, I sense this and this is going on. And it turns into a meltdown because they can't cope, and they come and find someone like us to actually say it's okay for you to actually have this sixth sense and this ability in an environment which is not allowed to communicate this incommunicable stuff.
I so love that. That is so true. In the tea room, beside the water cooler, all of that, people would seek me out because they realised they could share anything and I'd be non-judgmental, being a good listener, offering kind of helpful advice if guided. Absolutely. But too, I have this ability to be that shapeshifter, that chameleon, and, it's far more effective if people feel comfortable as well. So, yeah, the way I would speak in the corporate world is a different language to how I would speak in the spiritual community. But to be honest, the message is the same. It's just different words, different pathways to the same place. And people will hear you when you kind of use their lingo, yeah?
Yeah, and I think this is so super important, listeners, is that it's all language. And as Suzy said, tailoring the language, it's exactly the same, right? So a lot of the time in the spiritual woo-woo conversations, there's conversations and language that's said that makes absolutely no sense to a corporate person, right? And it's very hard to actually blend the two. And we need to know how to do situational awareness, to do things in a way, in a right context. And I'm sure, Suzy, you've had people come who are to see you who are very, I don't believe in this shit. And then you have to change your language a bit, don't you?
Yes. Well, I think, I can weave in that kind of more corporate kind of public service space, if you like, and also into that spiritual space. And yeah, yes, yeah, I think I love the way you explain things, Jason, because absolutely, yeah, spot on.
Yeah, and I think like when we're thinking about this, listeners, our purpose today and our focus is actually, well, how can you lead a conscious life, right? And the
Yes.
biggest challenge is a lot of the time we actually do our fitting in process. So we become a person for everybody, and we're actually trying to fit in instead of belong. And a conscious life is more than that, isn't it? Can you talk about what that means to you, Suzy? What's a conscious life to you?
I love that. A conscious life is being fully present, awake, if you like, fully aware, not going unconscious, not, numbing or bypassing. It's about creating magic in your life. It's about simple abundance. It's really about, being fully present is probably the best way to describe it. And, we talked about being that shapeshifter and, communicating in an intuitive, flowy way. But that doesn't mean you lose your authenticity, because living intuitively to me is actually peeling away the roles and obligations and, all those kind of masks that we put on to reveal our true self. And, it doesn't mean you're going to get it right. It's an ongoing process. But yeah, to me, it really is, being mindful, being heartful, working on it every day. And when I say work, I don't mean hard work. I mean really, doing what we need to do to be fully aware in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is really important, guys, is that we're all wanting to learn to actually be ourselves, right? How we language it is really different. And one of the things that really grinds my gears a lot in the world is that we find our people and then we separate. But essentially, we're all trying to do the same thing, trying to figure out how to be ourselves. And a lot of the time, we don't know how to do that. It's very, very difficult, and it's trying to do that in a way that's actually going to be suitable for us. And it's hard to know what that is half the time when we're growing. I know when I started helping people in 2001 to where I am now, I'm a completely different person. And I assume you are too, Suzy, having the experiences. And then what's it like, you get an insight, let's say, I've done this, you get an insight around something and you go, fuck, I've been lying to myself
Yes.
all these years because I became
Yes.
conscious of something. And I feel, you look at your past and you go, oh my God, I've been leading a lie.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I love that you explain that ever evolving journey. It's not like we ever really arrive, it's an ongoing process. Getting that realization that you've been lying to yourself, that breakdown that really is a beautiful breakthrough, because you've kind of realized that you've been living a lie. For me, I remember doing things for other people. So, being that I'm a recovering people pleaser, I'm a recovering overcompensator.
Yeah.
I remember my father loved bragging about me when I was in real estate, right? So, he'd love to tell all his mates that, oh, my daughter's doing so well. What I realized over the years was a lot of the stuff I was doing, I was enjoying it. And I'm grateful for the learning in it. But in saying that, a lot of the stuff I used to do wasn't really for me. I felt like I was doing it for others and almost bending myself into a pretzel, trying to make it okay for everyone else and not really following my own kind of higher guidance. So when I had that realization years ago, like, is this what I want to be doing, or is this what somebody else wants me to be doing, and it's not even their fault. It's just something that you buy into. Yeah, it's kind of really freeing, but at the time, it's kind of like, oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, I've had another recent realization where it's kind of like, you know, really taking that radical self-responsibility in regards to, my part in situations, even that has, we do that self-justification where it's kind of like, oh yeah, but they did this, or,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's very freeing, but at the time it's kind of like, oh fuck, I've been telling myself lies, or, I've been, justifying that situation. Yeah, I think but I love that. I love that kind of that realization of, oh wow,
Mm. And it's so interesting when we do this, listeners, is that when you as a leader, one of the biggest challenges for leaders is that people put us in a position, don't they, Suzy? They put us in a position of an identity. And
Yes.
we can actually buy into that identity and actually do the same thing without even realizing that people put us on sort of whatever they need us to be. And then we start following a route again that says, I'm being this person for everyone else, even when we don't realize sometimes, because we have this context and sometimes we go through a day and we go, okay, I was being this card for people that people needed to see me as opposed to people seeing me.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Oh, yeah. Even in that spiritual space, I really resist that guru complex, where, I often have people say to me, oh, you're really real. Like, I didn't realize that about you. It's almost like, I don't know if they're disappointed, or it's kind of like, I don't think they are.
Yeah.
I think it's more kind of like, oh, I guess we do, take on that persona for whatever reason. You build your brand, you do whatever you need to do. And, hopefully, I try and do it in a genuine way. But in saying that, it is that you're creating that persona. But at the same time, I loved what you said in regards to, but having that perception that that's not actually you, that's a job or a role or something that you do and you love to do it, and you're authentic in it, but you can step out of that too. I love that you said that, like having that realization that it's only a part of you, it's only a part of what you do. We're so multidimensional, so multifaceted. Being that observer and realizing that, oh, hang on a minute, that's just I love that.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. Like you've been voted Psychic of the Year a few times in Australia. Is that true? Or have I got that?
Yeah, it is, and I'm grateful for that accolade, but really it's just, it's just a beautiful blessing. It doesn't really mean anything. Does that make sense? Because I think the real value in what I do is guiding and helping people is far more important to me. And, I've had clients that I've had for 15 years that I've developed really strong connections with. To me, that is the reward. But it's kind of fun, it's kind of fun getting an award. Yeah.
Listeners, listen to this. Okay, so here's a woman who's been voted Psychic of the Year in Australia. But listen to what she's speaking now, because this is really, really important, because the number of times I've met psychics going, I'm this, I'm that. And we're talking about a woman who's actually got her head not up her ass, her feet firmly on the ground and saying, hey, that's a thing that I've gotten, but has not forgotten what she's here for. Because people who get accolades and these sorts of things can actually end up going, yeah, look at me, I'm Psychic of the Year, and that makes me the most important person in this room. And you have a real humbleness to you, Suzy, that actually knows, hey, you're here to do a role. And I think this is really important in leadership. This is what conscious a conscious life is all about, is to know that you're here to do something, that the awards that you get aren't that relevant. My mum's got award after award. She's a hairdresser. She's got so many awards sitting in her shed, and they're all dusted. She doesn't have them sitting anywhere. And no one would know the number of awards she has. And she, her and I won a Canberra Business Award for education. I won for education. Hers was for hairdressing this year. She was off getting photos done, and she didn't know I'd won too. And
oh, wow.
yeah, it was really, really interesting.
Oh,
Same
that's
night,
so great.
mum and son get an award. And I come into where the photos, she was just getting the photos done. I was just after her with my win. And both of us have an attitude, which is, she was very grateful that she won the award. And I was just like looking at the people saying, look at all us business owners, we're all amazing. And I looked at my son and I was just like, my son is so important here because I want to be the best I can for that man. Right. And
oh, wow.
my attitude is the same as yours, Suzy. It's more about what we can do to contribute rather than what it is that makes us the person. The result is you become well known, which you are, and that doesn't drop your ego into a problem. And I've been in the personal development space for a really long time. And I'm not going to talk about the publishing company. People will know what the publishing company is potentially if they've been in spirituality or personal development for a long time. I was a supporter of a publishing company. And I went to Sydney with a whole bunch of people many times to meet people. I got to meet people behind the scenes. And these are people with best-selling books, very well known, very, very well known. And I walked away with my head down. What was in the books was beautiful. I love the books. The people, I wasn't so sure about, because what I saw was a consciousness of arrogance, of being
Yes.
told how great they were, and they listened too much, and they stopped listening to anything other than the sound of their own voice. And this can be very, very challenging when you're wanting to just continually grow, and then you start creating a following of people. And then you actually don't realize you've become less conscious.
Yes. I've experienced that myself. How disappointing is it when you get to meet someone that, has written a book or whatever, and they don't even look up when they sign, they don't even make eye contact with you. Yeah, I know. I totally get that. Yeah, it's really beautiful when you can, really appreciate their success, and you can celebrate other people's success too. And it's wonderful to be acknowledged and valued. But at the same time, as you said, stay really grounded and realize that that's nice and everything. But at the end of the day, it's just a dusty trophy in the garden shed, right? So, yeah, I've been there myself. It's kind of like, really? You couldn't even look up?
Yeah.
Yeah, so true. I never want to be that, Yeah.
And I think this is really important, is that if you don't want to be that, that means you're going to actually continue to grow.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, because that's so true, because you never really arrive. It's that, that ever evolving kind of, journey that we go on.
So,
Yeah.
Suzy, I'd love to, the listeners for people who are in a job and they're wanting to have a job like yours or like mine, and you're doing a job where you get paid to help people understand themselves and grow, and you're an inspiration for many, and a person wants to do that. What is it about you that managed to have the courage to follow your dream, make it happen, and change your career from a corporate to what you love and do every single day. So how did you manage to break free and do it? What did you do, and what was your attitude? How did you manage it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I had a health scare at the time, and I was working crazy 100-hour weeks, and yeah, like running on adrenaline. I was exhausted and depleted, and really reaching out to beautiful healing modalities, or I was looking for deeper meaning in my life, really.
Yeah.
And then I got really very unwell. And during that period, it was no longer negotiable. I had to take that leap of faith and really focus on service. I had this real calling. It sounds corny, but it's true, to really focus on helping others. And I burnt the lifeboats. Like, I literally, I remember going into the senior manager's office and saying, oh, I'll be leaving. Like, what do you need? And they said, what do you mean? Like, it's like, I think I left within 2-3 weeks,
Yeah, wow.
and walked away from, like, people thought I was crazy. It's kind of like, what are you doing? Like, this is crazy. So I burnt the lifeboat. So I had no choice but to make it work. But in saying that, I had this kind of this faith. And the good thing about being intuitive and living a conscious life is you can see forward. You can kind of feel your way forward, and you kind of know it's the right path. You can't see the whole road or the whole staircase. It's just that next step. But it's kind of like, it really is that faith and taking that leap and having to make it work, and everything benefited. So, my health, my relationships, because at the time my relationships were falling apart too, because I was trying to be everything to everyone and work crazy hours, and it just wasn't working. Everything was falling apart. So, what felt like a massive crumbling at the time was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, because that rebuild, I was rebuilding it in a way that made sense to me. And I think too, because it happened quite quickly for me. Mm-hmm. There was this kind of quickening, thank goodness. So that was pretty much my story. Did that answer that question?
Yeah, it does. And I love what I pulled out of that is one statement that you made, that a lot of people, listeners, you have to understand what it is. It's the same as me, right? I did it a little bit more prudently. I transitioned out of the IT world, not through a health issue. I transitioned out and moved out, but I had a moment. I ended up in the psych ward in 2000. That wasn't much fun. That was my first entry into trying to change my career. It wasn't the greatest, funnest time, and I was in another country, so it was very, very difficult. I had to go back, and so I tried to do let's jump out. It didn't work out so well for me. But your statement that you have there is what, listeners, if you want to make a go of this, a lot of people have an idea and they never get there. So you had a no choice but to make it work attitude. And that's what I wanted to know, like, about particular people who create success. They have this same attitude. I have no choice but to make it work.
Yes. I have clients that say, like musicians that say, I'm going to give it 6 months, or, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give it until Christmas or whatever. And I go, really?
Yeah.
Like this, you've already said to the universe that you don't even truly trust it. Like, you're already,
Yeah. And it's so important to know this, is that once you actually say, I've got no choice, you look behind you and you've got a cliff behind you and you've only got a pathway in front. So if you want to make something work, and I've seen this a lot, I have to try and get some of the academy members who are making excuses to say, oh, it's all too hard. This is too much. And it's like, well, once you get to the place where it's no choice, you end up getting where you want to go a lot faster. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And enjoying the journey of it, that sounds kind of really cliche, but it's true. Getting to the creative joy of it, like that magical momentum, and create consistent momentum, and and focusing on helping get you out of ego as well. So you're not as worried about how am I going to pay the bills, or how am I going to, how am I going to because you still have to, live a physical life as well. So it's kind of like, well, how's that going to work, And people would say stuff to me like, oh, you can't make a living from that. Like, what do you do for a real job? That's like a backyard kind of hobby job, isn't it? Like, well, actually, I never really had that belief. I truly felt that you could run a psychic healing practice back then. That's what I was doing. And be abundant too, let go of that paradigm of, if you're spiritual, you've got to be poor, all that crazy crap,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is really important because it is a poor person's industry, isn't it?
Yes. It's really in victimhood. I think we're releasing contracts from past lives, in regards to that poverty mindset, like as in, somehow, if you're charging $200 an hour, somehow you're not being spiritual, you're focusing on the money, But I actually think, if people are investing time and money, they're often really dedicated to the process, aren't they? Right.
It is. So, it's really interesting around that is that the more investment, the more skin in the game, the more opportunity for change. And I figured this out. I remember when I started, I was charging $20 for a session in 2001. Right.
Yeah.
That's all I thought I was worth. And now I charge a lot more for what I do. And I noticed the more that people paid, the more skin in the game, the more change.
Yes.
And that's reality, guys, is that if you want to build something that's based on help, in the beginning, this is the attitude of all of the industry. Okay. It's a fundamentally flawed approach because we don't actually melt the money into the help. And if we blend the two, then we're actually going to make more of an impact. So you've got to make sure if you're starting out thinking about how you can create your numbers, what you can do, what are you got to do to transition, how much money can you bring to the table with the people that you want to serve. So then you know that you've got a pathway to actually be able to eat, drink, and be merry.
Yes. And then you can kind of share it too, I love that. I've had people say to me, oh, I've come to you for a real reading because I got this reading the other day and it was only $20 or something. And I go, oh, who did you see? And they tell me, and I go, oh, they're actually really brilliant. Like they're great at what they do. But this misconception in around money, like it's quite an interesting thing.
It is.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that we can actually start valuing ourselves, because I have a really strong want and desire on this planet, and I think we're in alignment. You just tell me if I'm wrong. My whole purpose is I just want good people to come first. I want good people to be leading their life personally first, and to be able to lead this planet, because if we keep letting go of our value around money, the dickheads are going to be actually ruling the planet for the rest of humanity.
Oh my goodness. Yes. We're definitely in alignment on that. So important, I think we need leaders that lead from the heart in a raw, vulnerable, real way, that have the universal collective, like it's not just about, the select few, and I feel like there is a shift happening, thank goodness. We're not out of the woods yet, but I feel like there is a shift in the right direction. It's challenging. I totally agree with that. And that abundance mindset and that abundance heart set in around money. Money is just an energetic exchange. It's just, I think we don't want to give it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. And look, I'd love to talk to you about, you mentioned something when you were chatting about numbing and bypassing.
Yes.
And so in your career of working with so many people, what do you notice about this bypassing thing that a lot of people do? And what do you think people need to do to fix it?
Yeah, very interesting. I think having the courage to do the deep unconscious work, releasing limiting beliefs and conditioning and programming that no longer serves them, it takes, you have to be brave. We all do it at some point. We've all done it, through addiction or through even spiritual bypassing where, if I buy this crystal or if I buy this, essential oil, and don't get me wrong, I love my crystals and my essential oils, but, miraculously somehow without doing the work, it's all going to be okay,
Yeah.
I love that radical self-responsibility. And, we all have good days and bad days, so it's not like you get it right every day. But I think it's important to really do the work. And even with the bypassing, it's interesting because I know a lot of highly intuitive people that know something's going to happen. They can see it, they can feel it, they can, they can see it unfurling and unfolding.
Yeah.
But they do it anyway because somehow they think they can fix it, navigate it, kind of like sidestep it somehow. So even intuitives do it. So being psychic doesn't mean that you listen or you're mindful of the red flags. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. The number of times I've hit my own walls consciously. And I'm like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, and I am doing it, and I hit the wall. We all do that, guys. Like people like Suzy and I will be conscious of stuff and we will still make dumb decisions, right? We all do that. And that's just part of our human conditioning. The worst thing is when you know you're doing it and you still do it anyway. And we all do it.
Or you do it again and again and again and again and again and again,
Yeah. And sometimes eventually we have enough of ourselves and we break it. And there's a timing thing that comes along with this. So there's a really cool story. It's like 5 paragraphs of life that I love sort of telling people. And it's like the hardest one, I'll just go to the middle one. There's a hole in the sidewalk, you fall in. It's your fault. You get out immediately, but you keep falling in that hole consciously. And that's when it's really, really hard because you've from ignorance to awareness is great. But then from awareness to breakthrough is a whole nother thing.
Yes.
And that's the challenging part. The awareness is awesome. And this is what you do, Suzy. You bring awareness to people. That's only the beginning stage. And as you said, Suzy, that you were psychic medium in the beginning, and then it's just like, well, how do you make people move, right? To get people to get,
oh my goodness,
make the change. And that's the difficult part to leverage that change and get over the other side.
Because you've got people that are stuck in a loop and they keep coming back for a reading and they're wanting a different future and a different outcome.
Yeah. And they get the same thing.
They're on this unconscious loop and they keep doing the same thing. Yeah. And from a compassionate perspective, it's kind of like, this is so painful. Why do you keep attracting these abusive partners? Like, this is so painful to witness. And, without judgment, you're not judging people, but it's kind of like, well, you could keep doing that, but I don't know how healthy that is for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I got quite frustrated with in regards to, well, I can tell you what's kind of going to happen. And, being that alchemist and that healer and I know you're incredibly amazing at that, Jason. It's kind of like sometimes we can kind of think we can fix other people's stuff And you can't fix other people's stuff if they're not willing to see it or know it or feel it or even, want to know it, right? So,
No.
yeah, there's that fine line of holding space for people to have their own, realizations and insights. That's actually really empowering. That's why I made the change. So I still do psychic mediumship, but, I love to do that kind of transformational work as well. To me, that's where the real juicy, good stuff is,
Yeah. You get to see the breakthroughs.
And because I've done a lot of that on myself too, like I've released a lot of crazy habits, and often sensitive people do. Sensitive people often want to self-medicate. They want to numb. They want to, just somehow make it work, But I think you and I have both had that realization that living a clean, put it this way, I no longer mix my spirits, yeah?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I stopped drinking in 2004. I stopped doing a lot of things because I knew it was very, very healthy for me to be better at what I did. And a lot of the time, you can self-medicate because you are too sensitive, and actually it becomes a detrimental problem, because if you think about medication in any form, you're not clear. Your information's not going to be clear. And so I knew I had to let go of a whole bunch of things, and sacrifice is actually not what people like to do,
Yes. Yeah. It's that, staying conscious, not going unconscious. And, sometimes we fall back into bad habits, but to be honest, if you're conscious about, living an intuitive life, you do it less and less and less and less. So, absolutely. I love, speaking to you, such an awakened man that holds space for people to, have a safe place for people to have that kind of realization is really inspiring. That's one of the reasons why I started listening to you, because it's kind of like, it was just so refreshing. It was so refreshing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
This is what I love. I love this statement that you made. And I think for people in personal development need to really hear this. And I'm just going to see if we can open this up a little bit. Tell me about radical self-responsibility. What does that actually look like? Because this is what people need to really understand. If you want to make a change, you can't do the same thing. So what's radical responsibility to you?
To me, it really is that genuine personal growth. It's not easy to be that honest with yourself, and it can be really painful, but the rewards are infinite. So radical self-responsibility is really empowering, because when you realize that you really do have that gift of free will and that you can consciously create a magical life, it's so great. But you can only do that if you really embrace self-responsibility. And we're not talking about victim blaming, or you can still be compassionate. You can still be a compassionate person. I'm talking about your own personal journey, your own, really kind of like, it's actually wonderful once you realize that, but it can be a bit scary. And I try and encourage my clients to do it too, but often, they need to do it in their own timing. So not everyone's ready to hear it, right? So, but I truly believe everything that you have in your life, you've attracted somehow. And some of it's fantastic and some of it's really painful. And relationships are our best teachers. So even though, the relationship learning can be really tricky too. But the best relationship you can have is the relationship you have with yourself, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And you can't help people if you're that wounded healer, that you're that wounded leader. Doesn't mean you're perfect. It just means that you're aware of your own stuff. Yeah.
That's right. And did you hear that? You're not perfect. You're aware of your own stuff. But if you actually pretend you've got your shit together, then it's going to create a whole lot of pressure. And listeners, if you go and get some help, here's some advice from both of us. I'll just come out of my mouth. listen to the advice and take the action. Don't just go to a reader and go, that was fun, right?
Yes.
Go to a reader and say, okay, that person's giving me some insight. I might follow through with that information, because a lot of people go and see a reader or go and see someone to help transformation. They expect the person to magically provide this brilliant life for them. And I know the number of times, I remember this one guy I worked on this guy's dad.
Yeah.
Had my hands on him when I was a healer, and I got, hey, Jason, I'm going to be dead in 8 months.
Yes.
And I'm like, and my mate goes, oh, what'd you think of my dad? And my intuition says, well, I'm not going to tell him, because that's going to change the way he thinks and what he does.
Yes.
So yeah, bang on, dead in 8 months, and had to deal with that experience. So sometimes you go and see someone, you go, yeah, this ain't going to be pretty. Right. So sometimes you go and see someone, and a lot of readers will go and tell you what you want to hear rather than actually reality.
What you need to hear.
And that's where you transition from, doing the journey work to help people move and give them the reality to, as opposed to the nice things that we can quite often hear from a person who's giving us a reading. And that's the challenging part, is to know how to transition to get the reality to make your life better. So take the advice on. If you hear something that could be a bit hard, take it on so you can move.
Yes. No grit, no pearl, right? So it's kind of like, yeah, that is such great advice, because I had a client that I sensed was literally going to have a heart attack, but I didn't want to tell her that, because I didn't want her to have a heart attack, in my healing practice. So it's kind of like, I highly encourage you to go and have your checkup to, like I'm like, and she's going, what are you getting at? I said, look, I'm not trying to frighten you, but I really believe that you need to go off and you need to, have a full checkup and, be really proactive about your health and, really kind of, not have those 3 bottles of wine at night. I'm worried for you, right? I'm not judging you. I'm worried for you, right? There's a big difference, yeah? And same thing, yeah, she had a massive heart attack. And I remember her contacting me going, you didn't tell me I was going to have a heart attack. And I'm going, well, I kind of did, but not in those words, right? So I didn't want to give you a heart attack at the time. So, yeah, really, really tricky. But I also have to have that detachment and that healthy boundary, realising that, everyone has a learning journey and they often have to do it in their own timing. That's been a realisation for me. Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of, I think it's important to be truthful with people and it's all in how you deliver the message, right? So there's always hope. But yeah, it's quite different reading for someone like you, Jason, that's got their shit together, compared to someone that really is on that really like self-destructive loop. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Yeah, and you got to know how to curb it. Like I know the number of times where I'm like, okay, I've got this insight, I'm going to have to park it. How long is it going to be at? How long will it take before I can share it? So if you're really wanting to help people transform, sometimes you have to park the insight because the timing's not going to be right.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
Knowing how to put that in the background and wait for that to come along.
Yes. And the way I do it is I plant seeds of, positive insights or suggestions or guidance in the right direction on their higher path, knowing that they're probably going to go down that painful path for another 6 months, but it's kind of like, they might remember that Suzy said, but in the end, there will be a way out of this, sure. I think that's an important part of what I do too, because, I think sometimes you have to live that life lesson or that journey. It's kind of, we can't
run away from our stuff. It's
no, people think they can. No. Even I thought I could.
Yeah.
Look, I know we're clever, but we're not that clever.
But that's what in the spiritual world, that's what I heard a lot of. When I started, you can instantly manifest something else. I was like, And I was just like, no, I'm not so sure about that. I tried it and it didn't work for me. And I ended up in the psych world with my instant manifestation. It was not the funnest.
Yes. Yes, we've both been there.
So it's one of those challenges that we all have to face. Now, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was jumping on your page, and you there's this beautiful card deck.
Thank you.
You've made one.
I've made two, actually.
Two.
But I noticed that you commented on my beautiful Faery Temple Oracle.
Yeah. So tell us about Oracle cards. What are they for?
Yes.
And why did you make some? What made you inclined to make some? What are they for, and why you?
Right. So Oracle cards really are that spiritual companion, that tool. I encourage people, and if you read the booklet on my Oracle decks or within my Oracle decks, I always encourage people to dive that bit deeper to make the messages more significant and relevant for them. So the Oracle really is a beautiful portal or hint from the universe or spiritual guidance that really opens your own pathways, your own doorways. I'm clairvoyant, so I love art. I love all the arts. I love music. I love art. So for me, those are visual clues and the magic of words woven together, because I'm involved in the whole creative process, including the art briefs to the artist. And, I love historical mythology. So, everything I write about, I've had a genuine connection to. So, yeah, I love Oracle cards because they're that beautiful kind of guidance to your own realizations, to your own epiphanies, your own insights. That's how I like to see it, So, yeah, I love that you jumped on and had a look at that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries. Look, I think it's really important, to understand what. I remember in 2003, I had this card deck, and I was shuffling them. I got this word patience. I was like, fuck that, shuffle it again. and then I flipped it again. I got patience again. I was like, fuck, I must not have set the intention right. So I shuffled again and got impatience, and then I shuffled again and got patience again. 4 times got the same card, and I was just like, fuck's sakes, I'm gonna have to deal with this word. And I realized patience is actually an expediter for change. I thought it was like I had to wait for stuff, and it wasn't anything to do with that. I had to do some meditation to find out what it meant for me, which is what you just said. And I think it's really important to actually do what Suzy said, is that the guidebook's a guide.
Yes.
The opportunity is you get the insight. What does it mean to you, and how do you go deeper so you can find out your own answers to your question? And all it does, in my opinion, is it gives us a sense of going, let's see the world consciously, just like what we're talking about today.
A focal point. Yeah.
It gives us a focal point for the day to get us to be able to see more rather than be ignorant to the world.
Yes. And I like magic and manifestation and alchemy and all of that. But underneath all that, I've woven in, NLP practices and things like that. So, it's a way of kind of getting those messages out there that are a bit more, how do I put it, a bit more empowering, a bit more, not just this is going to happen to you. And I love that you mentioned the shadow cards, because in my Oracle decks, I always put the light and the shadow, not the good or bad, not the, just the night and day, that beautiful duality, because we all have shitty days. We all, regardless of what we portray on Instagram or whatever, I guarantee we're all the same. We all have relationship issues. We all have, things work out and things that don't work out. And we're complicated beings, we're good until we're bad. We're kind until we're a bit mean. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think, it's important that we understand that, So I've run retreats and things where people have chosen a shadow card and they feel a bit ripped off because it's kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, what do you mean? I thought I'd let go of that. I don't want to have to do that again. It could be validation that you've already done it, or it could be that maybe you think you've done it, or you're lying to yourself or whatever,
100%.
Yeah. So I love that you mentioned that, the patience card. It's like, really? Patience again?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we lack it a lot of the time,
Yes.
And it's one of those biggest challenges. We want our thing before we have to put the work in to get it. And we'd rather just have it just appear out of nowhere.
Yes. Yeah. So yay. So I love all that creative stuff. Yeah.
What is one thing that you could give our listeners some advice on today about, making their life happen the way that they would like to? What's one thing very simple that you could say from what your experiences is to chase your dream instead of sit there and think about it?
Understand that everything you need to know is inside of you, that you have infinite access to higher streams of consciousness, to be your own guru and to have that sovereignty and that self-reliance and to be self-governing and to, have that faith in action, to take that leap of faith. Part of the manifestation process is to actually action it. And I know that you mentioned that a few times, So, have the courage. We don't talk about courage enough. Be that brave heart and do it anyway, Yeah. I love that.
I love that, hun. And look, Suzy, I really want to thank you for jumping on Uncovered today. And for listeners, I'm going to put all of Suzy's details in the show notes so you can get in touch with her if you want to get some help. She is the real deal. There's a lot of psychics that I would be running away from. There's a lot of people who do transformation that I wouldn't suggest or recommend. I do recommend this woman highly. She's very, very good at what she does. So find out what she does. She does retreats. She does transformation, she does reading, she does lots of things to help people grow. If you like this podcast, I'd love it if you could share and give it to someone who you believe really needs this right now and get the insights from what you experienced today, because we all need help and we all need someone to give us guidance. And thank you, Suzy, for not only hanging out with me today, but being the person who is a shining light for people who are in that dark tunnel.
Oh, thank you so much. And I want to I really appreciate you, Jason, for holding space in such a beautiful way. You do it so beautifully. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and also our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't buy it, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.